Hello, welcome to Big Bang Radio Spotlights. This is a show where we talk to independent artists from all around the world all about their music and their process for making it. I'm your host, Isaac Anderson, and today I get to sit down with Phil Moore from the band Bowerbirds. Without any further ado, here's the interview. Phil, thank you so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. Obviously, you are kind of a legend around here in North Carolina, and many other people know you. You're a great musician. And you've done a lot of awesome things throughout your musical career, and we're going to definitely get into that. But I want to touch on the musical mind that you had from the beginning. And that question I want to ask you is, what is your earliest musical memory?
My earliest musical memory is probably my mom playing piano. She didn't play it a lot, but she played Claire de Lune around the house by Debussy, and didn't really play anything else, honestly, when I was growing up, at least. I think she played more before that. But she played piano around the house, and I was always mesmerized by it and would go sit by her while she played piano. And that was, yeah, besides like going to church and stuff and singing hymns, I think that was like the earliest memory I had, really. The closest, at least, to my heart memory of music, so.
When I hear you sing specifically, there's like a certain naturalistic thing that kind of comes from when you're singing. It just feels like you hear a lot of singers and they sound like they're trying to sing. It just feels so effortless, and like it just kind of like flows out of you in a really natural way. So like I know your mom sang and everything, but like was the rest of your family, were they pretty musical?
Yeah, my sister used to write music back in the day, but I wouldn't say she was like. I wouldn't say she's musical now, but she was more musical than me when I was a kid. My dad started singing later in life, as kind of like he's just open to all things new and new, just like he's an adventurous soul. But it was more so that I started, I think, singing in choir and took to it. And my dad would like sing around the house, like Beatles songs and whatnot. But I think I just kind of took to choir and then like started being in bands when I was in 5th grade. So I've been like, singing, developing like, I guess like my ear in like loud, like playing like loud rock music in clubs and having to sing over stuff and just, just been singing for so long. I think it took me a while to develop my own voice. I would mimic people for so long, I like really like have some embarrassing recordings back in the day of me like sounding like exactly like Bad Brains from from early 80s and 90s punk rock stuff, and then like Arches of Loaf, and so there's like a lot of stuff that I have like took me a while to develop my own who I was, just kind of like took me a while to realize that I could sing just like myself, so didn't come naturally. I would say coming naturally did not come naturally.
Give me the days. Give me the days I knew I'd touch the veil. Still just a boy, green as a twig, swaying in the wind. Left our home in the cool of night. Everything right in the world. Just the two old souls and the end of times. Everything else has to burn. And we swing from the cables of evening's road, where the nighthawks come tumbling through the pink and gold. I've erased this history and replaced it with hope for the years to come.
I don't know exactly. How did you guys start?
Bowerbirds started like back in 2006 and 2006, and it was just around the time when I was living in South Carolina. I was a bird watcher at the time, and I was kind of, before that I was living in like college cities. Iowa City, moved from Iowa City to Raleigh, took this job in South Carolina close to when I got to Raleigh, down in Conway out in the swamp. And I just had all this time and space, and I started writing these songs, and I had none of my band or none of my recording equipment, just an acoustic guitar, and I really just started like, it was this nylon string guitar that was from the thrift store for like, $20, and I just started kind of getting into that really quiet kind of, lyrical based music, kind of having no other choice but to like focus on my lyrics. And even without a guitar, I'd be watching these birds nests and like writing lyrics while I was out there like in like the swamp. So it was kind of more just like a product of my surroundings, the transition to like softer, quieter music.
Do you tend to write from like a figurative standpoint, or do you try to go more for like, I want to go straight experiential? Because there's a little bit of like, you leave it ambiguous, but I don't know if you have like a process for doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great question. I don't try to. I kind of do what I know. Like I'm very envious of songwriters like John Darnielle, for example, who can write fiction, and I'm just not good at that. I've tried it before, and I just think I lean into what I know more than anything else. So I like lean into my pretty simple life that I know, and I'm just kind of like more of an introspective person, I feel like, than not. And so like I kind of dig into that. I think songwriting is sort of my time and space to feel like I'm taking care of myself, maybe, like kind of figuring stuff out. I guess I'm thinking in those lines where it's just like sort of therapy, I guess. Yeah.
I want to hop onto your location right now. Now, like I mentioned at the top of the interview, you're from NC. Specifically, I think you're in Durham right now, but like the Raleigh-Durham area, right?
Yep, I'm in Durham now. Yeah, living in Durham.
You're in the awesome area for music because Raleigh-Durham is really cool for the music. But in kind of your own mind, how is the music scene for the area that you're in, and how has the area just influenced the sound of your music?
That's a question close to my heart. I love this area so much. Like, it's changed because I actually moved from Iowa in around 2004, and that was more of just only a college town. Like you go to college and then you were like done with college, then you were in your 20s, and then it was sort of like, well, that's kind of the ceiling there for music, especially. There's plenty of jobs or whatever there, but that was kind of the ceiling. But then I came here and I felt like the artistic community in general was like, you could be in your 20s, you could be in your 30s, 40s, 50s. I met like all sorts of artists, younger than that. But it felt like a great place to just kind of do your own thing. There weren't a lot of rules imposed on you, I felt like. So I started like a web design company at the time, in a band at the time, and I felt like it was a very accepting community just to dig your heels into and try new things. People are very open and receptive, and I feel like I lucked out. But then still to this day, I feel like I'm still so very lucky with like Kate Rudy, like all these great musicians and great bands that kind of work on each other's stuff, record each other. They're all intertwined, and it doesn't feel like New York where there's like a rat race on top of that you have to like really keep up with some like outlandish rent or anything. You can find a decent place to live, cheap housing and everything. So it's kind of just the right amalgam of people and things. Can't explain it, but it's so wonderful to be here.
I'm really amazed to how like that just the Triangle area has such a plethora of like, you have the electronic, and you have like the rap community, you have like the folk community, you have the indie community. Like, I mean, you can basically go down, the Raleigh Strip, like where like Poorhouse and Slims and Kings, you can see 3 different kinds of shows in 3 different kinds of places. And not to mention like basement shows and stuff. I mean, it truly is really, really cool. Especially like it's really big for folk music right now. Like you mentioned, like Kate Rudy and all them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I feel very, very fortunate to be a part of this early on, and then to have it just like continue in this great organic way, So yeah,
absolutely,
very fortunate.
So Bowerbirds, like you said, started in 2006, and obviously since 2006, a lot of things have changed in the world, but also really changed in the music industry. Like since then, we had like streaming. MySpace kind of died and Facebook came alive, and we had Instagram, and social media was like it was. I mean, so many changes, probably too many to name. But just in your eyes, like, do you miss anything from the 2006 kind of like that era of making music?
Yeah, it's also hard for me because like I miss like being naive. You know what I mean? Like I miss being like young and naive, and that was awesome too. And coming up in music, I miss selling CDs on tour and being able to like pay for your gas with that. Like that was super cool. Kind of like sustain your life out there on the road. Maybe back in the day, especially like with like blogs and this organic movement of like people like music journalists just wanting to like spread the word and like people becoming music journalists just for that reason. And like I don't know, it's the internet gives people like voice that don't have voice, you know, whether it's like Twitter or whatever. And that's just like, that's really what's changed. I feel like is just tech has changed and different platforms have changed over the years. It was interesting to see the whole progression, I'll just say, for lack of a better stance on it. Yeah.
Heard that. I was wondering, as just a fan of your music in general, what's a typical day for you like? Do you tend to have times set aside so you can create music? I don't know. How exactly does that go for you?
That's a good question. It's totally different all the time. I feel like I think back in the day I had more of like a practice of when to write music, and now I kind of do it in more like manic phases. Like I'll just have a free weekend and I'll just kind of go crazy and write like 3 or 4 songs or something, you know. And the kind of manic phases that I go through when I write music kind of seem like more like I'm just channeling, not overthinking anything. I might not write music for 3 or 4 months at a time and then pull out, you know, voice memo and like you have a whole song in a day, you know. I just don't know. It's very there's no rhyme or reason, at least currently. So yeah.
You took a leave of absence for a couple of years. I believe it was right around 8 years, and you started releasing music last year again, to the joy of all of us because you make great music. But what inspired you to start releasing music again? And what was that gap like?
You know, I had actually written songs more slowly all throughout that time. So the newest record is actually like songs written from, you know, the very last tour, like right after the last tour till like not the present, but like a couple years ago. So it was actually like spanned like 6 years. Yeah, I didn't really like stop. I just kind of continued on and but I just kind of wanted to take a break from the music industry side of being in a band, like the touring and like recording, and then coming directly home from a tour and like starting the next album and then like touring again and like, you know, so it was like this cycle that it, you know, it's great to be able to do that like as a musician, and I feel very thankful to have been able to do that. But kind of like any job, it gets like kind of draining, and so it was just nice to spend a little more time with the music and like more time at home really too. So it was just wonderful time.
Heard that.
Some ways not wonderful, but yeah.
Well, you're coming out with a new album pretty soon. It's called Be Calm Young Lovers. You've released a couple songs recently. Specifically, Moon Phase is the big one that's come out right now. It's the one I've been jamming to the most.
Nice.
No problem. What was the process of recording that record like? I'm curious as a fan, but I just kind of wanted to hear. Did you record that yourself? Did you go to a studio? I don't know how exactly that worked.
Yeah, I did all the recording besides the drums by myself. So so I just recorded it over time. You know, all the songs were recorded over like those 6 years, like I was saying. But like, and I would record them in a cabin with my small setup out there. Just bought a few nice microphones and nice preamps, and like set them up in this small tobacco barn cabin out in the country near Siler City. Then my friend Ari Picker from Lost in the Trees, he recorded the drums also in Siler City in another tiny cabin. So no big studios were touched in the making of this record beyond maybe the mixing and mastering. And it was a slow process over time, and most of it happened just like you know, by myself in a cabin, getting a couple friends to work on it with me. But yeah.
Heard that. Well, that record's coming out April 30th. It should be on all the streaming platforms and everything. It should be available on your website. And if people want to keep up with you, just what you're up to and maybe some updates on the music, how can they find you online?
Instagram, Bowerbirds Music, I think is the handle, probably. Yeah, Instagram is like the only thing I really use anymore. So yeah.
Well, Phil, man, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much. But before we go, I have one more question. I don't know if you've ever seen a Big Bang Radio Spotlight before, but I'm a musician, but I also love film. And I believe those two worlds are not too far away from each other. And I believe artists of all kind, but specifically music, people that play music, are really connected to film in a certain way. So, Phil, I wanted to ask you before you go, what is your favorite movie?
Oh my gosh. I will say probably just because I discovered it at the right time in my early life, Paris, Texas. Classic at this point movie. Great movie.
Thanks to Phil for sitting down with us and talking all about Bowerbirds music. If you guys want to see more interviews just like this, you can find us online at Studio 67 NCC. Thank you all for watching. I'm Isaac Anderson, and until next time, stay lovely.